Welcome in, everybody. It's Thursday night. Welcome to another edition of the QUills show. Running a little behind tonight, but that's okay. And my camera is a little fuzzy there. I do apologize for that. We'll get through it. So, welcome in, everybody. QUills here with you, and time for another QUills show. And starting a little late tonight. Get into that in a second here, but got a lot to talk about here. Rumors are flying about the Cole Hamels retirement ceremony tomorrow. I'll give you thoughts on that, including some controversial ones, at least what I went through today. Monty Williams was fired by the Detroit Pistons. Not surprised with him being fired. I'll tell you why I still am a little surprised at it for a different reason. We may have expanding fields for the men's and women's basketball tourneys. NFL may go to 18 games. There's ESPN did a survey on that and some behind the scenes stuff that they were doing, and also the Tiger Woods exemption. I'll tell you all about that as well here. So I hope everybody's doing great out there. Me, I'm hot. I'm tired. And it's only day 3 of 7 that I'm working, so a little worn out right now, but that's okay. But um, so we got off to a late start tonight, and reason why I was late because um, you know, typical male bachelor pad stuff. No, not banging a woman, even though that wouldn't be a bad idea right about now. But actually, it wouldn't be good because it's so damn hot here. The air conditioning is still on, but um, I was late because stupid me didn't do wash for the last few days, and I was down to my last pair of shorts. And I will tell you one thing: if you are hanging around me and you see me in my jorts, there's a reason why I'm in my jorts. They are my emergency pair of shorts because I went through my entire wardrobe of shorts. And given this time of the year, there's no reason for me to wear pants at all. Especially with working at home, I don't have to worry about having to put pants on to go to work, even though I still um, think I can bash my old union, can I? Well, my old IBEW union didn't want to do anything about it, mainly because nobody complained about it to the union. But of course, if I had complained about it, I'm sure people complained I complained about it on certain points that were valid. But um, but because I wear shorts around the house all day, every day, and probably all year, I ran out of shorts today, and I was like, oh no. So it's like, oh, I got to do an emergency run. And the reason why I say emergency run is because technically, I'm not supposed to do a load of wash after 8 o'clock. So I got to I got to the um, I got to the washing machine like 7:45. Now the thing is, it's one of those many rules that this apartment complex is it's hard to enforce. Now, granted, they have a security camera in there, but do they really? One, do they work? And two, are they recording? And three, if there's nothing that they don't bring something to the management office attention, do they just record over it? But then again, in this day and age, you don't need a tape or anything like that. You just need enough hard drive space to go through the video. And the reason why I say that is because there is some person in my building, don't know where they are, nor do I care. And I'm not. going to call them out unless they give me the stink eye like they were trying to do last Friday or last Saturday. Um, Not supposed to have any barbecue grills. Well, part of it is we don't have any decks to walk out on to sit, which I wouldn't recommend this next few days because it's so damn hot. It's going to be near 100 here. Um, there's there isn't enough room with the parking lots and all the everything here, and it's also a safety thing because you never know. You get a gust of wind, maybe you start a brush fire, or God forbid, a building goes on fire. Um, but it's unenforceable rule. Even though the people that were barbecuing were brazen as hell because they were right underneath a security camera. I mean, it's kind of like me. I thought about it last winter when we got our first snow. I thought about pelting the apartment above me with ice balls because they bang all day. They come home. I hear them. I hear those thunder hooves. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, thunder hooves is home. And last summer they blasted music all day, all night, on the weekends. Some Saturdays before 8 o'clock in the morning. Um, but I took a look at where all the cameras are. I'm like, no, I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get kicked out of here. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not taking the chance. But I'm the type of person where unless you are a total ass to me, yeah, then I'll call the management office. But, um, but I've had I have my little routine before I go to bed at night. I check the doors are locked, make sure my keys aren't there, and making sure there's anything hanging from there at all as well. But um, I hear the dryer or washer going at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning a lot of times. So, me going till 9 o'clock isn't that big of a deal. But, I'm just like, well, you want to hang yourself, you can go hang yourself. I don't care. But, um, but I'll tell you what, that's why I was late. I just had to get some things done that it was either do it now or be sitting here in my underwear tomorrow while working. Ugly thought, I know. Sorry about that. Or I could do it now and just start late. Now, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to have to start on time. So that load of wash would have had to wait till tomorrow morning. But, um, but yeah. Um, so the great thing is with me just streaming on my personal Twitch, X, and YouTube, because I'm doing that, I can just do, I can start late if I had to. Like if I had technical difficulties, I could lie and say I had major technical difficulties. Chairman, welcome in, man. Chairman of the board, he's part of the Action Lab crew, one of the many people that follow me over there, and glad to have him here tonight. Um, but that's the reason why we're late tonight. But once in a couple of weeks, once I pick up that fourth day, which includes some other things which I don't think I can talk about. I would rather not talk about it because I don't want to get myself into trouble. So the best way to not get yourself into trouble is just watch what you say, and start. So whether it's in a couple of weeks in the middle of July or August 1st, we will be going to that that fourth day on Wednesday nights, and that fourth day will include an added feature or two. So just to let you guys know about that. So let's get to the main part here. And this is where me getting being bored while working actually led to a topic tonight. So I'm actually looking at um, Instagram on my phone, and there is an account that announces number changes for Major League Baseball, um, number changes, guys that have just made it to the majors or those that have been traded to new teams. They tell you, oh, Joe Quills is wearing number 69, first person since this person in 2021, the only other person in Phillies history that wore 69. Um, Something like that. So, so earlier today, I'm looking there because I'm just trying to take my mind off of work between calls, even if it's for 5 seconds. The way those calls can be, I need a break, even if it's a micro break, as I call it. And I see that David Dahl changed his number from 35 to 31. Now, for example, chairman of the board, guarantee you he's like, Joe, who the hell cares if you change this number? Well, for my Philly fans out there, I will tell you why. It means something. And this is a game that's going to be on Apple TV. And if you follow me on Instagram at Joe Quills, I shared a post on my Insta stories that will actually tell you about a promotion where you can get 2 months free, so you don't have to complain about the Phillies being on Apple TV. And also, Chairman, he's a Braves fan. If he wanted to, he can get that 2 month offer if he wanted to. So, um, so I'm thinking for about 2 seconds. I'm like, the Cole Hamels retirement ceremony is tomorrow night before the Phillies Diamondbacks game. So I'm like, they didn't announce it. Are they going to do a surprise jersey retirement ceremony? But here's the thing with that. The Philadelphia Phillies will only retire your number if you get into the Hall of Fame. Now, there's only two exceptions that I know of that happened. First was Richie Ashburn. Now, he is in the Hall of Fame, but they retired his number, I believe, around 1979, 1980, 1981, somewhere in that late 70s, early 80s period. So the criterion of being in the Hall of Fame may have been after that because the Phillies went through a couple different ownerships. So it might have been after it was done. But Woody Ashburn, lovable guy. Everybody loved him. They loved him with Harry Callis even. So, yeah, I can understand that. The other one was Dick Allen. And I think the reason why they did his retirement of his number 15 with the Phillies, I think that was because they knew that he did not have much time left in his life because he died a few months later. But the ceremony, I think it was during COVID when they were restricting fans and all that. So they actually had the ceremony as a non-fan event. I think it was just because of him. I think, and I don't know if it was anything like they knew he was passing away soon. So they did do that. And I really thought that, um, you know, knowing that there was exceptions to the rule, I'm wondering, are they going to retire his jersey because David Dahl mysteriously changed his jersey number on an off day, the day before his Cole Hamels officially retires as a Philly? So I posted on the Crossing Broad Instagram, and Crossing Broad is a sports site kind of like what Bleacher Brothers is, except they've been around much longer and they focus solely on Philly sports. So they posted on Instagram that with David Dahl switching his number, does this mean Cole Hamels is getting his number retired? Well, typical me, because I like to be the guy who draws attention sometimes. I said, if you're going to retire, if you're going to retire Cole Hamels 35 prematurely, there are two Phillies that need to be retired before him: Tug McGraw and Brad Lidge. And I got ripped to shreds. Actually, some people liked what I had to say, but they're probably the uneducated Philly fan. Probably, and probably the people that were ripping me were those guys in Delco who wear their jorts every day. And, I'm wearing jorts today, but that's only because I ran out of shorts to wear today. But I basically said, when you're a franchise that has only had 2 championships in 141 years, I think the pitcher that gets the last out of the World Series, especially on a strikeout, should have their number retired as a Philly. Now, Tug McGraw, he was as beloved as Richie Ashburn. Once he came to the Phillies from the Mets, everybody loved him. And even Tug McGraw had a career where everybody loved him when he was with 6ABC WPVI here in Philadelphia, Action News. He was there for a few years. Matter of fact, my aunt met him once. Because I think he was doing promotional work with the bank that she was with at the time. So he had all that on top of it. But if Richie Ashburn got his Hall of Fame, he got his number retired without that Hall of Fame criterion. Now, mind you, there may not have been that criterion back in the day. I don't know, and I didn't research it. Tug McGraw should be in the Hall of Fame or have his number retired. And, you can bring Tim McGraw and Faith Hill in because Tim McGraw is his son. And they did reconcile in the final years of Tug McGraw's life, last 5-10 years of his life. But Brad Lidge, everybody got on me for that. They're like, oh, Brad Lidge, he had a horseshit year in 2019. Yeah, don't you remember Game 4 of the World Series? I said, yeah, I remember Game 4 of the World Series. Your hero, Charlie Manuel, when it was 2-1 Yankees, the Phillies had just tied the game in the bottom of the 8th. I remember I was watching that game with my girlfriend at the time. And when the Phillies imploded in that 9th inning where Charlie Manuel, that redneck, decided to overshift for Mark Teixeira, leaving the slowest guy in the infield on the left side of the infield, allowed Johnny Damon to get a double steal on his own because you're not thinking straight. Because, you're thinking da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, dueling banjos. But I'll tell you what. And I went back at the person, And the thing is, when you just when you read text, you don't know the tone. So I wasn't as angry, riled up like I am now. But Charlie Manuel potentially cost the Phillies 2 or 3 additional World Series. The year that he won, that was Jimmy Williams' World Series. Jimmy Williams was brought in to be the bench coach. If it wasn't for Pat Gillick knowing what Charlie Manuel's deficiencies were, and that were basically the strategy of the game, Phillies would be 1 for 141. if it wasn't for Pat Gillick bringing in Jimmy Williams, who passed away a few months ago, and I honored him by saying the true manager of the 2008 Philadelphia Phillies. But I just think with some franchises, like for example, St. Louis, who's playing right now down in Birmingham, Alabama at Rickwood Field, they wouldn't do it because guess what? They got 11 World Series. But for a franchise like the Phillies that's only won twice in 141 seasons, I think that could be a criterion they could use. Now, am I talking out of my ass when I posted that this afternoon? Probably. I admit I talk out of my ass. I'm trying to stir shit up. And I mentioned it on my Facebook page, and somebody said, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I could see both ways on this. But the thing is, if you have the New York Yankees, even though they retired numbers because you pooped in the third stall at the home locker room, basically, because of all the numbers they have retired, even though that's most of them are deserving. Paul O'Neill, not really. But I'll tell you what. When I was on X this afternoon, I did see that Jim Salisbury, the former beat writer, I believe he used to be on NBC Sports Philadelphia. He's now working for PHLY. I think they call it Philly Sports. Um, he said on there, the Phillies are not retiring Cole Hamels' number. And I wasn't running onto X and saying, "Oh, they're retiring his number," because let me tell you, this is the worst year to have an opposing opinion in the 4-year presidential cycle. Because guess what? I say something that leans left, everybody on the right will come after me. I say something that leans to the right, everybody that leans left will come out after you. You talk about Cole Hamels not deserving of a his number being retired. Everybody who did not does not agree with that opinion I have about Tug McGraw and Brad Lidge, they'll come after me. Like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? So I'll tell you what. So it does not look like Cole Hamels is getting his number retired, because I think that they would let it be known, because Cole Hamels was such a beloved player here, led the team to the 2008 World Series, threw a no-hitter in Chicago, threw a combined no-hitter in Atlanta, against Atlanta, I should say, and against the Cubs. Um, you know, he is an iconic player who just doesn't have the stats to be in the Hall of Fame, even with the transition from the pitchers getting all those complete games and wins to being pulled after 6 or 7 innings because you're at 100 pitches. We can't pitch you a third time. Or, well, we're in the third time around in this lineup. This is where you're going to get hit really hard. So that's going to happen. But truthfully, I don't think there's any Phillies that are worthy of the Hall of Fame other than Chase Utley. Some people will argue Jimmy Rollins. Now, the one thing the writers won't let you know when they vote, because he's not going to get in because he's only like 11% last year. And comparing the positions are different because, the second baseman did this, the shortstop did this, and everybody there's all different criteria, even though the general criteria is 25 to 3,000 hits, 500 home runs, stuff like that, except for Mark McGwire. Even he wasn't a roid rager, a roid guy. He only had 1,400 hits. So Um, but some people say, "Oh, Jimmy Rollins belongs in the Hall of Fame. He was a leader." If Jimmy Rollins was a true leader, he would not have refused to hustle as much as he did in his career. And I've gotten ripped many times with that. I can't tell you how many times I sat there on a Sunday afternoon and I saw him lollygagging to first base, lollygagging from second on a Chase Utley triple, where he almost got thrown out the plate. So, I don't have a vote. I'm not going to beg the Baseball Writers Committee to give me one because I never will. But, if the Phillies end up doing that tomorrow, okay, nothing I can do. But at least I can start the conversation that, hey, why not Tug McGraw? Why not Brad Lidge? Because the way this franchise has been for 141 years, we need to honor those two pitchers. And let's say the Phillies win one more World Series, and let's say, I don't know, JT Realmuto hits a walk-off to win the World Series. Maybe he deserves it. But that was something that came up today, and I don't know about you. I just think, it's just a weird thing. And David Dahl rehabbed with Cole Hamels last year in San Diego. So they became good friends. He understood what that number meant. He said, I can't wear that anymore. Okay, that's fine. But your mind starts to wonder when you are a Phillies fan and you know that tomorrow is the retirement night. And your mind starts wondering. And my mind wandered a little bit today. And, I wasn't really looking to see, are they retiring his number? Are they not? But fairly quickly, I found uh, that post from Jim Salisbury. I was like, okay, they're not going to retire it, but it still makes you think, and that's what I'm all about, making you think a little bit. Um, but nothing I can do. If they retire, they retire. If they don't, they don't. Whatever. So that's an interesting thing I saw today. Um, let's go to the NBA here. And this was actually, I got two stories here from the NBA. And the first one was breaking news that came up earlier this afternoon while I was sitting here working. Um, the Lakers agreed to a 4-year contract with Sixers legend J.J. Redick to make him the franchise's next coach. And for those that know me well enough, I joke around when I say Philly sports team legend for the most part. But, J.J. Redick was here for a couple of years. He did his job. It was just that the Sixers couldn't do shit. But he signs a 4-year deal with the Lakers. Now, does that mean LeBron stays there? I hope so, because I do not want him in Philly. I think LeBron will get Nick Nurse fired in half a season because, I don't like what he's doing with this team. He's the general manager, de facto general manager. But Redick was an NBA analyst for ESPN. He played 15 years in the NBA, met with the Lakers vice president and general manager Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss over the weekend. Conversation on the vacancy continued throughout the week. Redick was offered the job this morning, and Pelinka became sold on Redick's ability to connect with players, on his basketball IQ, and believes surrounding Redick with an elite coaching staff that will help shorten his learning curve into his first coaching job. And That came that, and it's. I was starting to wonder. I was starting to wonder with these job openings, are these job openings going to get filled before the NBA draft next week? Because don't you want to know what the what the coaching philosophy is going to be a little bit, so okay, well, this person's not going to fit in there, but you know, sometimes teams go square peg round hole. So, but a lot of times you do have. I would figure that you would want to have a team have their head coach ready. Now, two job openings are still open. The Cleveland Cavaliers, and that was a bit of a late firing of the Cavs coach Bickerstaff. And yesterday or 2 days ago, Monty Williams was fired. Now, I said this on my original podcast. Actually, it was before it. I think I said it on. I might even said it on Funkin' Fantasy originally when I was on there, and when that was still running. It might have been that. It might have been my blog. It might have been just a Facebook post or Twitter post. The one thing I will say, if you're going to fire somebody, fire them right away, right after the season's over. Now, at least with the Cavaliers coaching position, they at least wasn't too long after they lost to Boston in the second round. Okay, no big deal. But even though Monty Williams probably deserved to be shit canned, even though he deserved it, do you need to string him along for 6 weeks to 2 months after he finished the season? Now, 14-68, whether you're on a 1 year deal, 2 year deal, 6 year deal, no matter what it is, you deserve to be fired. No matter how falsely high those expectations are. Now, he started out 2-0. And then they lost like 26, 27, 28 in a row, whatever that number was. Does any coach, unless they pull a Bobby Petrino and has an affair with his secretary or whatever she was and gets fired for cause, unless it's a situation like that, I don't understand why you string somebody along for 6 weeks. And I criticized the Phillies when they fired Gabe Kapler back at the end of the 2019 season. Now, I wasn't criticizing the Phillies for firing Gabe Kapler because, I thought, okay, well, he deserves it, but maybe you give him one more year. But I'm also a person that says if there's a manager you really want, I highly recommend you fire him and you go after that other guy. That's what they really did. They fired Gabe Kapler to get to Joe Girardi. And Phillies fired Joe Girardi. Rob Thompson slides over a chair, and the rest is Phillies history. But just the fact that you have, even after that final game of the season in 2019, you had the main owner, John Middleton, the main muckety muck. He was talking to Gabe Kapler. He was at the end of the dugout. He was in the box right next to the dugout, and he had a conversation with Gabe Kapler for 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm sitting there saying, yeah, they're firing him, they're firing him, they're firing him. And then you're waiting for the news 5, 10, 15 minutes later after the game, nothing. An hour, nothing. Go to sleep, nothing. Get up the next morning, nothing. Go to bed again, nothing. Like 2 weeks later, that's when they fire him. Now, if you're Gabe Kapler, as horrible as it was that you got strung along for 2 weeks, you know, I would have said, hey, if you're going to fire me right after the game. If you're going to fire me after 2 years, that's what I would have done. But the thing is, if you have aspirations of continuing as a manager like he did, then you don't say a word. You go through the interview process with the San Francisco Giants and you get the job. Okay. But I don't think it's fair whether it's Monty Williams, even though he only had 14 wins this year. I don't care if it's him or if it's Gabe Kapler or it's somebody else who just randomly gets fired. And like coaches and managers always say, you're hired to get fired. But you do have, I think, a little bit of ethics involved. Where if you're going to fire somebody, unless it's a Bobby Petrino type case where you end up with you wind up with getting in an accident, all of a sudden you find out there's this affair with your secretary or whatever the hell she was. Unless it's something like that, you would think that they would have somebody to say, hey, maybe we should have fired him ahead of time. But to wait 6 to 8 weeks, it just shows what a horrible mess the Detroit Pistons are right now. And it's not those old Piston teams with Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, all those guys, the glory years of Detroit basketball. And even when they had that 1-year championship with Larry Brown. And also on top of that, they end up with only having the 5th pick this year because for the second year in a row, they had the best chance of winning the lottery, and they didn't even get a top 4 selection. But it's really frustrating just in general to me to see somebody get strung along for 6 weeks and then, oh, by the way, you're fired. Guy's probably on vacation somewhere, and all of a sudden you say, oh, you're fired. Goodbye. Because even now, the timing of it is horrible because guess what? He's probably getting ready for the draft. He's probably doing the final things that a head coach would do in the NBA, scouting, whatever, going through draft possibilities, especially a year like this year where there is no consensus, number one. And also the fact, not only do you not have a consensus, number one, you also do not have a strong draft class this year. So you could argue a bunch of guys for being number 1 through 5. And in many different orders. So now, I guess the general manager will make the pick without a head coach because I doubt you would get a head coach in the next week, even though I'm probably wrong. But Cleveland doesn't have a head coach. That's been about a month. But that seemed like more of a player's, oh, I don't like the coach. Okay, go on. Or Detroit, where I don't know what they're thinking right now. And, you got to wonder what happened to that franchise because it just seems like that they're totally not conforming with the rest of the league and trying to win. And I don't think they're trying to tank. I just think that they're a rudderless ship right now. And I would really think that they really need to get things back in shape quick, because they're going to be the laughing stock of the league for years to come unless they find a coach that wants to be there, for one, and two, can turn it around in his part, along with the GM, along with the owner, everybody else, because it's everybody having to chip in to improve the product that they have, which is utter shit right now. But that's the one question I would ask, is why did it take so long? Because whether you fired him the day after the season, moments after the last horn went, kind of like how that coach from Utah State's women's team last season, she said, you know, what are your plans for this year? My plans are nothing because I just got fired. You know, I just think that it was just a horrible move by Detroit. Not because Monty Williams did not deserve to get fired. He did. And you're paying him $67 million to go away, or whatever the number is. But it's just the timing of it with the draft next week. It's horrible. It's a horrible move in terms of the timing of the draft. So, but we'll see what happens with that. Maybe they do get a new coach quickly in there. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But now, on to college basketball, where some people from this year's tournament that just ended a couple months ago will be drafted into the NBA next week. There are talks that they're going to expand the NCAA tournament to either 72 or 78 teams, or 72 or 76. And this is the result of the conference commissioners looking to add these teams as an option to leave each field, leave the fields, men's and women's, at 68 teams. Now, I'm trying to see here. This plan was presented within the last couple of days. Now, proposals were outlined to the commissioners this week by Dan Gavin, who's the senior vice president of basketball, and NCAA vice president for women's basketball, Lynn Holzman. ESPN source said that under this proposal, the expansion of the 68-team field included for 4 and 18 models. The NCAA would keep its 64-team bracket, but would add playing games involving the number 10 through 12 seeds. Now, here's the thing. Who is probably going to get those at-large bids? That's right, the Power Five. Especially when you have the big the Power Five conferences, Power Four conferences. Well, I guess you could say Power Five, because technically the Big East is a power basketball only conference, but you do have these power conferences. They're going to get those positions. And the power conferences have been wreaking havoc over the last couple of years, because the NIT got changed this past year. And I know many people don't give a rat's ass about the NIT. But the NIT, they had to take a certain amount of Power 5 schools this year as well. They got rid of the criterion where if you had won your conference regular season title and lost the NCAA tournament and did not get into the tourney, the big tourney, you have an automatic berth to the NIT. So I just think this is just a way beyond the money grab that this obviously is, that the mid-major and smaller schools that probably deserve an opportunity to be in this tournament will get screwed once again, and you'll see the Big Ten, the Big 12, the SEC. Well, the SEC hasn't been that good at basketball. They've had like 4 or 5 teams lately, not 9, 10, 11, 12. You're going to see these power conferences get 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 teams. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if it's doesn't matter if it's the 8th, ninth, 10th. Most likely they're just there for the sake of, um, for the, because, oh, we're a major conference. That's why we got in. How do you think Syracuse got into the tourney a couple of times in the final years of Jim Boeheim's regime? And even took a team to the Final Four with a team whose RPI was lower than most NIT teams. But you do have a um, you, if they do expand, we know where those at-large bids are going. Guarantee you at least 7 of the 8 or 3 of the 4 are going to power schools. And I would not be surprised if you see a power team getting an at-large bid at 16 and 17, 16 and 18, something like that. You're going to see a sub 500 team get in there because, oh my God, we have to have insert Power 5 school team name here in the tournament over a mid-major who went 27-5 and lost in the first round of their conference tournament on a fluke play. The stuff that happens, that's the reason why they call it March Madness, even though I'm trying not to use that term because, oh, copyright. But that's what it is. Now, what I recommend. Before I get to my recommendation, if a men's tournament expands, it's expected the women's tourney will expand as well, which I have no problem with because, if you're going to do it to the one, you have to do it to the other. I mean, even though they won't cite Title IX on here, in a way you should, because what happens for the men happens for the women. Now, many in college basketball say they believe the 60-18 fields and 3 weekends of play are ideal, but pressure has grown to add teams to games in one of the most popular events in the United States calendar. Now, last year, the NCAA Division I Board of Directors approved recommendations that include allowing 1/4 of the teams in larger sports to compete in championship events. In that scenario, the March Madness tournaments could expand to nearly 90 teams. Now, what I would recommend, because I think it would work perfectly, because instead of the Thursday and Friday games, think about it, you would have 4 days under my plan where you would have 16 games a day. You would have 9 facing 24, 10 playing 23, 11 and 22. You had 24 teams in each region. But I think also because we've actually seen a number 1 seed fall twice to a 16 team, maybe it's time to expand. Because if you expand, then it won't be as big a deal that a 16 defeats a 1, because a 16, like Fairleigh Dickinson was a couple of years ago over Purdue, or UMBC um, over Virginia, those matchups would have been those two teams that would have won would have played a 9:24 game instead of a 1:16 game because the bottom of the bottom will drop to 22, 23, and 24 seeds, and the 9 seed and the 16 seeds will end up being those at-large teams that will probably would have been in the NIT. But I just think 96 teams works best. It gets the most out of your bet and most out of the bang for your buck. You get 4 days of madness, 4 days of first and second round coverage that will be crazy. You know, and all you got to do, I mean, there isn't that much that has to be done to approve it. Well, besides approving it, all you got to do is you got to make sure the tourneys are done Saturday night. Um, you could probably let the teams know that have those Wednesday tournament games because the Friday Sunday games I would have them open up on Wednesday with the 9:24 games, 9:24, 16, 17s, something like that. Those games would be, the Friday, the sites that would be Friday Sunday would be Wednesday Friday Sunday, and then you would have the Thursday Saturday Monday games. Those sites, but I just think if you go 96, you will be right around the percentage of the 1985 tournament when it was about 260 schools and you had 64 teams in there. It's about 25%, and in this case, you have about 360 now, 96, a little over 25%, and it works great. You don't have any odd scenarios where you have only one game playing at this site at the afternoon session, or you just go 3-6-9 with your games if you have a three game site for the first round for playing games. But I just think if you're going to expand, you go to 96, you go to Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. You have the announcement earlier today on Sunday because that way, those teams that have those Wednesday games, they can go right away to those Wednesday sites, especially if you're on the East Coast and you got to go to Spokane, Washington. Okay, we got to get out of town tonight or very latest Monday morning because of 3 hour time difference and everything like that. But the one thing I would say, if you're going to expand, there is one thing that they have to do. You have to you have to make the regular season mean a little bit more. Now, one thing I do like that the Ivy League does, they only take the top four teams in the conference. And most years, that fourth team is right around 500. What I recommend to the NCAA, and you can run with this and do whatever you want, if your team cannot get a 500 record overall against Division One opponents, or you cannot get a 500 record overall in your conference, you do not deserve to play in a postseason. Make that regular season mean a little bit more because everybody that hears, oh, expanding the tourney, you can't do that. Aside from the small conferences that win the conference, these berths don't mean much. Almost everybody gets in. Yeah, that's the case. But if you do that and have the qualifier, the prerequisite of getting in, guess what? You have to win to get in. And there's always a few games that would come down to, okay, if we win, we're in. If we're not, our season's over. Time to get back our jerseys. But the NCAA wants to go up to 80, and that's it. But now, more games would provide a small boost through ticket sales and merchandise, but the pool of money NCAA uses to pay out conferences and member schools will essentially stay the same. That would change, however, is how the money would be divided up if the tourney broadens. But I think 96 works best, but that's just me. Um, Now, if you do it with the 72 or 76 team format that they're talking about right now, there will need to be a second play-in site because they have 4 games at Dayton every year. Now, after I read this earlier, I'm like, they could do 4 games in one day there if they really wanted to, but um, Dayton already has games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Wouldn't be able to host additional play-in games ahead of the tournament's traditional Thursday first round, unless you go 12:30, 3, 6:30, 9, and make it like it's a first round site where you have 4 games a day. But the women's play-in games, they're played at the site of the first 2 rounds of the tournament. So let's say you're in that 16 play-in where the winner gets the number 1 seed. Okay, you're going to play that game at South Carolina, and oh, by the way, because you win that game, good luck against Dawn Staley's team. Now, expansion is backed by larger conferences, surprise. And smaller conferences do not want to lose the automatic bids that come with a conference tournament championship or face the prospect of always being slotted for the play-in games, which is fair, which is a fair argument. But one thing, if you really got to know me, you saw my college basketball stuff, my college football stuff. I am not a fan of eye tests, selection committees, that sort of thing. Because when it's a team that's 18 and 16 in the ACC for basketball or Big Ten or wherever, and then you have a team like, I don't know, Northern Iowa, 29 and 4, had a fluke loss in their conference tournament in the quarterfinals. Even though Northern Iowa has a great resume, we got to take that ACC team at 18 and 16 because it's the ACC. They beat the hell out of each other in the ACC all year. The Power 5 conference is going to win 99 times out of 100. Plain and simple. But the earliest that the NCAA tournament would expand would be the 25-26 season. So we got another year with 68 teams. Now, be interesting to see what the women's tourney, because the women's tourney this year had its most successful viewers and audience and fans watching games. Now, part of it could be Caitlin Clark. Part of it may be the fact that maybe women's college basketball is finally growing in terms of interest. And 18.7 million watched the South Carolina-Iowa game. Now, of course, a lot of people were complaining, oh, the game's on too late. It doesn't start till 9:20. Can't you start it an hour earlier? Wah. Well, it's the same as the Super Bowl, which I'll get into the NFL in a second. But, part of the fact that the women's ratings were better was because it was Caitlin Clark playing against South Carolina. South Carolina was an undefeated team. And part of it may have been the men's game was at 9:20. May have been that UConn destroyed everything it saw the last 2 years in the postseason. There's many different factors here, but you never know. Things may course correct. The men's ratings go up, the women's ratings go down. Who knows? But I'm not a fan of 72 or 76. I think 96 works best. And with this tourney that Fox is going to be having, where they're going to be taking teams away from the NCAA for the NIT tourney, because the NIT is owned by the NCAA now. The NCAA, the Fox tourney, they're going to be taking teams away. And basically, the NIT is probably going to be dead in 3 to 5 years. And if that's the case, then, a great event got shit canned. Because it's not even at Madison Square Garden anymore. This year was at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Indianapolis. But, I just think with more teams, you need more slots for the postseason tourney. But what do I know? So that was something that came up today that I saw. Now, this was an article I saw earlier today that was interesting. And once again, it's ESPN because I printed it off of there. If you watch the Pat McAfee show, he had Roger Goodell on the show. But for whatever reason, Roger Goodell will not go on the Dane Patrick show for whatever reason. But I think Roger Goodell is a clown anyway. I need to get me one of those Roger Goodell clown t-shirts and make sure not to wear it around the NFL experience or anything like that. But Pat McAfee was in Detroit for the NFL draft. Roger Goodell came on for an interview. And out of the clear blue, it was questioned, but the question was asked a few times, but the media wasn't really running too much with it, especially in the print or electronic. Print and electronic are basically the same thing now because print papers just don't really exist anymore. But the one thing Roger Goodell said, I'd rather replace a preseason game with a regular season game any day when being questioned about an 18th game back in April. That's just picking quality. If we get to 18-2, which would mean 18 regular season games and 2 preseason games, that's not an unreasonable thing. So this had been pretty dormant. They went to 17 games because of the latest collective bargaining agreement, which was signed in 2020, I believe. You do have, all of a sudden it started, oh my God, he wants 18 games. But the thing is, as I see my phone lighting up, I have to take a look every once in a while. But the one thing I would say is, if you take away the safety factor, which is always a thing, I would say the only way that this would work within reason and, with the way how dangerous the game of football is and, everything else, the only way I think it could work is if you go 18 regular season games with 2 bye weeks. Now, if you go with 2 bye weeks, that will give the fans what they've been begging for the last 10, 15, 20 years. Because, oh my God, the game ends too late. I'm too hungover to go to work the next day. Because then, if you move it back a week, it falls on the President's Day weekend, conveniently. So everybody will be off the next day. Now, the only thing is, once every few years, you're going to have a Super Bowl on Valentine's Day. So imagine imagine restaurants on Valentine's Day getting the old up the butt because guess what? Nobody's out for Valentine's Day dinner because it's Super Bowl Sunday or it's extra packed because now you have the Super Bowl on top of Valentine's Day. But something tells me that Roger Goodell will be like, "Oh, we got to appease those, we got to appease the lovebirds out there, and the women that don't like football, and the women that aren't that only watch football because it's Taylor Swift in the bench in the super box." You know, we have to look at it this way. We got to look at this. We got to look at that. And then we got to script this. We got to script that. You know, the fans will get what they want with having a Sunday Super Bowl before President's Day. But everybody's mixed on this right now. Um, but additional regular season games seems like a no-brainer for the fans and for the league. The 18th game means more revenue, obviously, duh. And it would push the Super Bowl back to President's Day, like I mentioned, or President's Day weekend, meaning many could enjoy a Monday holiday after the Sunday night Super Bowl. Now, Ryan Kelly of the Colts said, I think it's up to every player to decide in regards to wanting that 18th game. Because it's about revenues and everything else. But I guarantee you, with the fact that the players only get about 48% of the revenues, I doubt that they will go for it. He suggests, well, hey guys, if you give us 70% of the income, and the owners take 30, obviously you take it. But I doubt the owners would budge from that 48 and a half. I think everybody has a line to draw in the sand, and we'll see where that is. Most were indifferent about a later Super Bowl, which, many of them don't get to the Super Bowl anyway, but some had strong feelings about adding a regular season game to expedite at the expense of a preseason game. Others were still wrapping their heads around the possibility and the ripple effects. Now, Ryan Kelly, who is on the NFLPA executive committee, he said 18 games sounds great when Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show. Until you're one of those that are going out there and putting the helmet on for 18 of those games and come talk to me. Okay, that's fair. And, you could probably entice the players, hey, we'll give you an extra bye week. Even though bye weeks probably don't do too much for a lot of people because, you blow out that ACL, you can have 23 bye weeks. You're still going to be out for the season. They pulled a couple of guys in Pittsburgh. Safety DeMonte Kazee, and I know I'm mispronouncing that. As he considered the question about an 18-game season, teammate Deshaun Elliott stood a couple lockers away shaking his head as he overheard the exchange. Kazee said, whatever the league gives you, man, you just got to adjust to it. I got to this point in my life. I'm an old head now, about to be 31. You just got to adjust everything and go from there. Them giving us 18 games, I wouldn't complain about it. But then again, he's not going to be in the NFL much longer because he's 31 years old. Deshaun Elliott interjected, I would, they just don't pay enough. Now, that's a microcosm of discussions being held in locker rooms around the league. Now, ESPN did survey the players. 46% were in favor of an 18-game schedule with stipulations, and 8% voted yes without stipulation. So I imagine that means 18-2 with also two bye weeks, I would think. But you would think you would want a second bye week. It's like, well, if you're going to give us that second game, if you're going to add that 18th game, you better give us another bye week. And I think the CFL, even though they only have 7, 8, 9 teams, however it is, I believe they have two bye weeks. But don't quote me on that. Now, Tommy Tremble, the Panther, said, if they take out a preseason game, I'm okay with that as long as the pay correlates with what they're asking us to do. Okay. But the thing is, you're probably going to have to renegotiate that contract because even though you hear later on, oh, it's another paycheck. Well, it's the same salary. It's just that it gets divided into 18 paychecks instead of 17. But you will have additional revenue. So you would have to say, guess what? Give me more money. But if they're going to make us do one more game, then they need to add something to the check. I'm totally fine doing my job, but whenever they decide, hopefully it's for the best intentions of the league and for the players themselves. Josie Jewell, who's also in the Panther, said, another game equals more money? Sure, let's do it. Well, it's going to be more revenue, but you may not see it, but your union brothers probably will, depending on where they are in the league, how many years, that sort of thing. But for those that went through the contentious collective bargaining agreement negotiations in 2020, adding a second bye week, eliminating 2 preseason games, and depositing an extra week's game check isn't enough. Because I can tell you from collective bargaining, even though I wasn't in the actual boardroom when my employer and my union were going back and forth, and it was actually a collective of all the unions. It's like, well, if you give us this, we'll give you that. It's not we're going to shove this down your throat or up your ass. And Bank Boy's here. Welcome in, Bank. Hope you're doing well out there. But I can tell you from being in 2 strikes, actually 3, being union rep for 2 of them, I can tell you that they try to keep you up to date. And the first one I had where I was steward, which was early 2000s. I think we were already downtown, so late aughts, early teens. We had matter of fact, yeah, it was when we were downtown because we actually had updates every day, and I'm printing them out for everybody. And I remember I purposely printed them on colored paper, yellow paper, green paper, whatever paper color I had. The reason why I did that was because when I was done at the end of the night, if I saw anything laying out, because you don't trust management to begin with, but on top of that, you have other situations as well. Management will be like, well, why are you doing this? Because I have the right to inform our people, and giving them a copy of an email sent to me, if you're going to go after somebody for these printouts, go after them for leaving them here. Don't go after me. But thankfully that never happened. But the one thing that happened was because the first strike we had, we went on strike, we went back to work without a deal, and then they negotiated for another year, but they put a gag order in when we went back to work, so nobody knew anything. And then the second contract, the second time we went out, we had no information whatsoever, and we were out 6 to 8 weeks. And let me tell you, being out 6 to 8 weeks sucks, and it would be horrible if we went out again in a couple of years. And I fear that something might happen like that. And but in terms of football, you know, the way things are, if if I don't want to if I don't want to give into something, well, if I'm going to give into something, well, you need to give into something, because I'm not giving up this one thing that we hold tried and true because you're not giving us anything. Because that's the art of the negotiation, no matter what it is. It's okay, well, you give me this, I'll give you that. It's what's called quid pro quo. You can't just say, oh, you got to do this. No, I don't have to do it. You know, but we'll do it if you agree to this. And that's what the NFL's going to have to do. And probably it's going to be the revenues, because in the last collective bargaining agreement, the players can receive a maximum of 48.8% of the revenue for any 17-game season. I think they would want probably back to 50. Now, if the league owners are intent on adding an 18th game before the expiration of the current collective bargaining agreement in 2030, the union could use the opportunity to increase the players' share of revenue. And even if you add a 1%, that is a ton of money, hundreds of millions. Now, for example, the Pittsburgh guy Elliott said they're not paying us enough money already. They're stingy with their money. They want to make us play 18 games. As a player union, we should get way more money than what we are getting, and not just the top guys. And the thing is, they're not out here playing football. They're not here running around putting their bodies on the line. Now, that part is something I agree with. They don't care. They don't. All they care about is making money. But if you're going to make money on the top end, the bottom end has to make money too. True. Now, Elliott was part of the 90% of players that are completely against regular season schedule expansion. Minka Fitzpatrick is part of that group too. Fitzpatrick said, I think 17 is more than enough. Plus a playoff. The dudes that play 100% of the snaps in the regular season are probably barely playing in the removed preseason game, so it doesn't really do you much. Fair. But, I mean, this was a fascinating story of what everybody's thinking. For many of those players, no amount of compromise and extra money can account for the extra risk for player health and safety. Now, the one thing I did see here, some people are express apathy and resignation that they'll end up doing what they want. There was something here, and I got to find it here just to confirm it. The owners are not all down with 18 games. Here it is. New York Giants owner John Mara said in May, substituting a regular season game for a preseason game is probably more acceptable to the fans. I can't say I'm necessarily crazy about extending the season. I worry more about player fatigue and wear and tear on the players moving forward. That's one of the reasons why we have to have the discussion with them. But now for the two sides to engage in negotiations for an 18th game, the owners would have to come to a consensus about this 18 game schedule. And if John Mara is saying that about an 18th game, what are the other owners saying? At least behind closed doors, because you get some owners at a press conference, they'll say, "Oh, we need that 18th game," but deep down inside, they're really saying the same thing that John Mara just said in this article. So once the owners come to a consensus, and after presenting a proposal to the league, the ownership group and the NFLPA would engage in negotiations of a new collective bargaining agreement. So they basically got to rip up the old agreement and come up with a new one. Think of it as ratifying a new constitution rather than adding an amendment. But the good thing is, if they get the agreement, which I don't think they will, even though 18 games, 18 games, 2 bye weeks, 2 exhibition games, it's still wear and tear on your body. I think we can agree to that. But like I said, the quid pro quo, the union would undoubtedly come up with its own wish list to facilitate acceptance of an additional game. A list that could include a revamped off-season workout schedule, an improved revenue split. Once the negotiations were hammered out, a vote would go to the NFLPA board and membership to ratify the new bargaining agreement with a majority needed for approval. And that's the same no matter what it is in the collective bargaining process. The two sides throw, well, we don't like this. We want it to be this. Well, we're not changing it. Well, what if we give you this and you can allow this? And, it goes back and forth. It's a lot more. It's a lot of different things that happen over the case of weeks and months, depending on going on here. So, but what happens here for the players is the players are carefully mulling rare leverage here as the calls intensify for more games and longer seasons. But you're going to have to give them something in return for that 18th game: more money, an extra bye week, Deshaun Watson, a couple of massage therapists, but you get the idea. And me, as much as I'd love to see an 18-game season, even though it will only work with 2 bye weeks, and if you do it with 2 bye weeks, you're still going to have all the injuries that you normally see in a given year, and probably a little bit more because you're going to have more and more injuries. So, as much as I'd like to see it, I would not be surprised if it does not happen. But that's just me. Final story here. And this is actually from golf here. And, I don't usually talk golf too much, but, we did have that great finish with Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy. And, I came short last night on the Action Lab stream of saying that Bryson DeChambeau only left for LIV because he's a roid user. Now, I just don't like the guy, but apparently everybody's starting to like him now. Maybe it's because, you know, he gets to be more himself and live and whatever, and only has to play 3 rounds a weekend or some crap like that. Um, but the PGA Tour has created a special sponsor exemption for 15-time major champion Tiger Woods and Woods alone, based on his exceptional lifetime achievement. The tour told its members in a memo Tuesday night. The sponsor exemption would be available for Woods to complete in 8 signature events, which feature limited fields, increased prize money, and FedEx Cup points. Now, the one thing is, I can understand that because it's Tiger Woods, but I don't think Tiger Woods has much time left on the golf course. I mean, it's nice that he came back from that auto accident a couple years ago. And I said a couple of years ago that he needed to retire, not because of the injury, but for his kids. But, you know, like I said, I don't have, I can state my opinion, no matter if it's a hot take or a cold take or whatever. I still feel that Tiger has done enough on tour where he's going to be the legend that Jack Nicklaus was, that Arnold Palmer was. And you can go back further in history. Now, this exemption would be available for Woods to compete in the 8 signature events, which feature limited fields, increased prize money, and FedEx Cup points. Now, Woods has won 82 times on tour. I believe that's the most on the PGA Tour ever. He otherwise wouldn't qualify for the signature events with $20 million purses because he isn't playing well enough to enough competitive golf after returning to the tour from serious injuries in a car wreck in February 2021. Now, this was approved during a joint meeting with the PGA Tour Enterprises Board of Directors on Tuesday. The tour told its members an additional sponsor exemption will be created to recognize Tiger Woods in his own category as a player who has reached an exceptional lifetime achievement threshold of 80-plus career wins. And the way golf is, we may not see anybody get close to 80 wins again. Who knows? Maybe Scotty Scheffler, but, he doesn't really strike me as a guy that will get to 80, but what do I know? Now, this season, there were 8 Signature Series events. They were the Century, AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, Genesis Invitational, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the RBC Heritage, Wells Fargo Championship, Memorial Tournament, and the Travelers Championship. In the memo, PGA Commissioner Jay Monahan said the policy board was considering implementing a 36-hole cut in each of the signature events. Only the Genesis Arnold Palmer Memorial currently do. The board took no action. Will continue discussing the topic. And what they're going to do is they're also going to create an alternate list that would ensure that each of the signature events has a field of 72 players. The Travelers only had 71 players this week. Only has 78 after Rory McIlroy withdrew on Monday. Woods has only competed in 9 official PGA Tour events in the past 3 seasons since returning in the 2022 Masters. The only non-major event he's competed in is the Genesis at Riviera outside LA, which he hosts and benefits his foundation. He's going to play in the Open Championship. He was asked during the U.S. Open if playing in more events may help him perform better in majors. He doesn't seem ready to play additional tournaments. He said, I only got one more tournament this year. Even if I win the British Open, I don't think I'll be in the FedEx Cup playoffs. Just one more event, and then I'll come back to whenever I come back. So, but, but the fact that they worded that as a one time thing, I guess that's sufficient, you would think. And we don't know how much longer we have. And I hate to word it this way, but you get the idea. I don't know how much time Tiger Woods has left as a professional golfer. Um, he doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to be on the senior tour. I'm sorry, whatever they call it now, because it's no longer senior because the word senior is offensive. He doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to be in that uh, on that tour, the Champions Tour. That's what it is now. He doesn't strike me as that kind of a guy. I also think that we know he's not going to live. If he would have gone away because they probably would have gave him billions of barrels of oil, billions of dollars. I forget what the rumor was a few years ago when they were trying to recruit. But it is going. I mean, but they could have given him $1 billion and played 3 rounds a weekend for 12, 16 weekends, whatever the season is. But I think as long as it's set in stone, one guy has this exemption, that's it. And you had the proof that he won 82 PGA tournaments, okay, then I'm okay with that. As long as you say one and done, that's it. Maybe when somebody wins 82 tournaments in 10, 15 years, maybe you readdress it. But I don't see I'm okay with this as a one-time thing, even though some people say, hey, I've won 70 or I've won X amount of majors. Don't I get this? Oh, you're not Tiger Woods. I did not bang a Perkins waitress. Still not getting it. I didn't crash my car. Not getting it. I didn't get arrested after my wife beat the shit out of me with a 9-iron. Still not getting it. You get the idea. But I just think of if it's a one-time thing and you have it in black and white, it's a Tiger Woods thing and that's it. Because there may never be another Tiger Woods in terms of 15 majors, uh, 82 overall championships, Perkins waitresses. All right, I'm playing around with the Perkins waitress thing, but you get the idea. But it's just a dangerous thing where it's like, oh, well, what about me? I could see that happening, but I don't think you can really fault the PGA for trying to do that to get even more ratings when, you know, there's a bit of a fracture with everything going on with Live versus PGA. But, you know, but hey, I would love that exemption. And, you know, but I will have an exemption on Saturday because we will be live on the Bleacher Brothers page on Saturday. The Bleacher Brothers Twitch, X, Facebook, YouTube. Now I know I'm missing a couple other ones, but so be it. On Saturday at 10 a.m. will be also eligible. I don't know what I'm looking at Saturday. I know we're going to look at the Ohio Derby from Thistledown. They got a big field for that race, and local hope Uncle Heavy will be in there, and Deposition is also in there. That's another Philly-based horse. They're going out to Cleveland for that race. And you also got a couple of Kentucky Derby or Triple Crown horses, a couple other Triple Crown horses that were in that Triple Crown trail. They're going to be running as well. The race is at 6:30 p.m. Um, and now that I'm actually posting my own articles now, I may post an article next week, um, posting, um, you know, what to expect from the 3-year-olds for the rest of the year. Like, all right, now that the Triple Crown is over, what happens now? And the horses go in all different directions. Some of them go from state to state, like Ohio to Iowa to West Virginia for those individual derbies. Or if they're the top of the top, they'll go to Haskell at Monmouth at the end of August, end of July. Then they'll go up to Saratoga for the Travers, which is the summer derby. Or they may run at the Jim Dandy, which is the prep race there, which is around the time of the Haskell. So if you don't go to Haskell, you go there. Then you go to the Pennsylvania Derby or the Oklahoma Derby. You have all different options here for 3-year-olds that want to stay with running with 3-year-olds. Some may want to go run against older horses, but eventually over time they are going to have to face the older horses in the Breeders' Cup, the Dirt Mile, the Sprint, the Classic, whatever it is. But you're going to it could be an interesting article once I start writing it. You will have different roads that these take, and some of them will end up meeting each other again in the near future. So, but we will be talking Ohio Derby. I'm looking for at least one more race. We usually go an hour, 10 to 11, and we're going to have a hard stop at 11:15 at the very latest because I got to work on Saturday. I'm in day 3 of 7 right now. I'm not off till next Tuesday. It's just I had Sunday and Monday off this week. And just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, but it's all good. So I encourage you to join me Saturday on the Bleacher Brothers, Twitch, X, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is. We'll be there 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. And we'll see if we can get you guys a couple of winners because did have 2 winners this week so far with my QUills Picks Winners articles, but those 2, the one got bet down from 10 to 1 to 5 to 2. I didn't think it was going to get bet down that much. It took a ton of money at the end. It went from like 6 to 1 to 5 to 2. And then I did a race at Parks. That horse won, but it was 1 to 9. The horse that I really liked was Scratch. I was like, just take the 7. And the 7 won, but it was 1 to 9. So, fortunately, not good on the ROI or return of investment. So I am going to call it a night. Do want to thank Bank Boy for joining me and Chairman of the Board for joining me here. And I'll be back here on Monday night. We may have a Stanley Cup champion, or we may have Game 7. And Bank Boy, glad to have you here. Thank you so much. Glad to provide some content, some entertainment, some thought. A little bit of everything for everybody. So I believe Game 7 is Friday. Game 7 is Monday, right? Yeah, Game 7 is Monday. So if there is a Game 7, I'll figure something out. So thank you, Bank Boy. Thank you, Chairman of the Board. Thank you, those watching on X. Thank you, those on YouTube, and thanks to those that are watching after the fact because I do it for you guys, and I have fun doing this. So I do appreciate everybody, and I will catch you Monday at 9 p.m. I'll promise to start on time, and we'll have some fun. Have a great night, everybody. Have a great weekend. Catch you